They say old buildings remember what people forget. Every cracked tile, every faded mural, every creaking stair, they hold stories. And I used to believe restoring those stories was my calling, until someone turned mine into a ruin. My name is Leora Penn, age 44, born and raised in Savannah, Georgia, a city that smells like magnolias, bourbon, and ghosts. For 20 years I ran Penn Heritage Restorations, a small but proud business that revived historic hotels and mansions across the South. I built it from nothing. Every contract, every permit, every piece of peeling wallpaper, I earned with sweat, sleepless nights, and the kind of stubborn pride only a Southern woman knows, until the day I met Mara Ellison. Mara was everything I wasn't. Young, glossy, charming in that champagne glass way. We met at a preservation conference in Charleston. She'd just moved from Atlanta, said she wanted to learn from the best. I should have known right then. Compliments that sweet always rot from the inside. Still, I took her under my wing, taught her how to read a 19th century floor plan, how to balance history with modern safety codes, how to charm city inspectors without selling your soul. She called me mentor. I called her partner. And for a while, that's what she was. Our biggest project came in 2018, the Harrison Hotel, an abandoned 1880s landmark off Bay Street. A grand, crumbling beauty with wrought iron balconies and ghost stories in every hall. I'd been bidding for that contract for 5 years. When the city finally called my name, it felt like destiny. Mara and I walked through those halls together for the first time. I still remember the light falling through the broken windows, how dust glimmered like gold in the air. "We're going to make her sing again," I said. "No," Mara whispered, smiling. "You are." Funny how she said that. Like she already knew she'd take the song for herself. It started small. Emails I never got, calls I never returned, permits lost in city archives. I'd shrug it off, thinking it was bureaucracy being bureaucracy. Until the day I walked into the mayor's office and saw Mara sitting there, wearing my company's badge, smiling. "Leora," she said, like she'd seen a ghost. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "I'm finalizing the Harrison deal," she said sweetly. They wanted faster progress, so the board agreed to transfer oversight to me. I stared at her, then at the city official beside her. He wouldn't meet my eyes. And then, on the desk, my company's logo replaced with hers, Ellison Heritage Group. She'd done it quietly, forged permits, altered contracts, even bribed a zoning inspector to push my name out of the paperwork. It wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. Everything I'd built, every late night, every deal, every ounce of dignity, stolen by the woman who'd once called me family. I tried to fight back, filed a complaint, gathered documents, emails, timelines. But she was too careful. Every forged permit looked official, every witness too scared or too paid off to speak. The city labeled it a miscommunication. I called it what it was: theft. Within 3 months, Mara was on the front page of Savannah Weekly, her picture under the headline, "Local Visionary Restores Harrison Hotel to Glory." And there, in small print at the bottom, project originally developed by Penn Heritage Restorations. They didn't even spell my name right. I stopped leaving my house for a while. Clients dropped me. Banks stopped calling. And in a town like Savannah, reputation burns faster than fire. I remember sitting in my office one night, empty bottles on the floor, blueprints rolled up like tombstones, listening to the rain hit the roof. The storm sounded like applause. Maybe the city was clapping for her, or maybe it was laughing at me. That night, I realized something. Mara hadn't just stolen my business. She'd stolen my story. And there's only one way to reclaim a story. You tell it louder than the thief. 2 months later, I heard the city was planning its annual Savannah Heritage Gala, a celebration for preservationists, donors, and officials. Mara would be the guest of honor. She'd be presenting her visionary work on the Harrison Hotel. The irony? The event would be held inside the hotel I'd designed. When I got the invitation, unintentional, I'm sure, I laughed until I cried. Then I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in months. Inside were my old blueprints, the original restoration plans I'd submitted to the city. The real ones, signed, dated, and sealed. And right next to them, an old flash drive labeled Harrison Draft Permits. I plugged it in. There it was, her signature, forged, sloppy, hidden in plain sight. I sat back, staring at the screen, and felt something rise inside me that I hadn't felt in months. Not anger, not grief, something colder, cleaner, resolve. That night, I booked a ticket to Atlanta. There was a journalist I knew, someone who'd love a story like this. Someone who believed that truth, when timed right, can ruin a liar faster than fire ever could. As I packed my bag, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't broken anymore. She was sharpening. "You took my name, Mara," I whispered. "Now I'll take yours." Atlanta smelled like rain and exhaust. It wasn't Savannah's kind of rain, soft, lazy, poetic. This was city rain, fast, cold, unforgiving. The kind that washed away chalk lines but never guilt. I hadn't been here in years. Last time I came, I was a guest speaker at a preservation symposium. Now I was walking into a newsroom, not as an expert, but as a ghost who wanted justice. His name was Miles Danner, a journalist I'd met a decade ago when he wrote a feature on women in restoration. Back then, he called me the woman who resurrects the South. Now I needed him to help me resurrect the truth. When I walked into his office, he almost didn't recognize me. Then he did, and his smile faded into something softer. "Leora Penn. Damn, you dropped off the map." "Maps burn easily when people redraw the lines," I said. "So this is about the Harrison job. You've been reading the papers." He leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms. "Mara Ellison, she's Savannah's golden girl right now. Gold flakes," I said. "Shiny on the surface, rot underneath." I pulled out the USB and slid it across his desk. Every fake permit, every forged seal. She stole my business, my name, and the city gave her an award for it. Miles plugged it in, his eyes narrowed as he scrolled through the files. "These are clean copies, detailed. Where'd you get them?" "From my archives." She didn't think I'd keep them. He smiled faintly. "You kept everything." "Everything," I said. "Even the parts that hurt." We spent hours in that office. Miles took notes, asked questions, cross-referenced city filings. By sunset, his wall was covered in printed permits and timelines connected with red string. Like a crime scene, which it was. Finally, he looked at me. "If we publish this, it'll blow up the entire preservation board. You ready for that?" "They built their empire on my ruins," I said. "Let them crumble." He hesitated. "You're not doing this just for revenge." "No," I said. "I'm doing it so my silence stops helping her." That night, I checked into a small motel off Peachtree Street. Cheap, loud, anonymous, perfect. The walls smelled like cigarettes and second chances. I laid my blueprints out on the bed. The real ones. The Harrisons' floor plan stared back at me like an old friend who'd been through hell too. And then I noticed something, a signature, not mine, not Mara's. On the corner of the final page, J. Rowe. It hit me. That was Jason Rowe, the city's former permit officer. He'd retired last year, quietly, right after Mara's promotion. If anyone could prove she'd forged the paperwork, it was him. The next morning, I drove 2 hours south to a little town called Darien, where the Spanish moss hung like tired ghosts over old fences. Jason lived in a rundown bungalow near the river. He answered the door in jeans and a fishing hat. "Miss Penn," he said, surprised. "You remember me." "Hard to forget. You rebuilt half of downtown Savannah. I need to talk to you about the Harrison Hotel project." He froze. The air went still, the kind of stillness that says, "I know what you're asking." "That's a dangerous topic," he muttered. "So is lying," I said. "And she's been doing a lot of that." He sighed, motioned for me to come in. Inside smelled of old wood and coffee. He poured 2 mugs, sat down, and looked at me for a long time before speaking. "Mara came to me 2 years ago, said you were stepping back from the project, brought me signed forms. They had your name, your signature, everything looked real. But you knew it wasn't me." "Eventually," he admitted, "but by then it was too late. The city didn't want a scandal. So you kept quiet," he nodded. "They paid me to retire early, but it's been eating at me since." He stood up, rummaged through a drawer, and came back with a small envelope. "I made copies before I left. Couldn't throw them out. Guess I was waiting for someone with more courage than me." Inside were the original approval letters, and at the bottom of one, a date mismatch that proved Mara had submitted her version before mine was ever filed. I felt my throat tighten. Proof. After all this time, I finally had it. "Jason," I said quietly, "you just gave me my life back." "No," he said. "You're about to take it back yourself." I drove home with that envelope on the passenger seat, the sun setting over the Georgia marshlands like a slow-burning ember. for the first time in years, I didn't feel haunted. I felt ready. Because this wasn't just going to be an expose, it was going to be a reconstruction. Not of a building, but of my name. When I called Miles, his voice was electric. "You got Rose's statement? And his documents. Perfect. We'll publish it next week." But I stopped him. "No, not yet." "Why?" "Because Mara's presenting at the Savannah Heritage Gala in 10 days. You want to confront her there?" "Not confront. Reveal." I smiled into the phone. "Let her shine under the lights first. Then we'll show what her spotlight's made of." As I hung up, thunder rolled in the distance. Slow, heavy, deliberate. I looked out my motel window at the city skyline. For the first time, the storm didn't scare me. It sounded like applause. Savannah never really changes. It just learns how to hide its sins under Spanish moss and silk drapes. By the time I drove back into town, the streets looked the same. But I didn't. The woman who had left months ago was broken. The one returning was built from proof and patience. The Savannah Heritage Gala was the event of the year. An orchestra, a silent auction, politicians and heirs in pearls and linen suits. A stage for hypocrisy, dressed in charm. And this year's restoration queen would be none other than Mara Ellison. Her face was everywhere. Billboards, newsletters, TV interviews. She'd even renamed the Harrison Ballroom after herself. The Ellison Hall. It was like watching someone carve their initials into your tombstone. But I smiled every time I saw her photo, because soon those same cameras would catch the real story. One I'd been waiting years to tell. Before I could reveal anything, I needed timing and allies. That's when I called Delilah Crane. She'd been my accountant once upon a time. A quiet woman with sharp glasses and a sharper memory. When I told her my plan, she didn't even hesitate. "You're serious?" "More than I've ever been." "Then you'll need someone inside," she said. "Inside what?" "The event committee." Turns out Delilah's cousin, Hannah Lee, was part of the gala's planning board. And she still owed Delilah a favor. 2 days later, I sat across from Hannah in a cafe near Forsyth Park. She wore pearls and politeness, like armor. "You want a ticket to the gala?" she asked. "No," I said. "I want access." She frowned. "That's not something I can just hand out." "You don't need to hand it out," I said. "You just need to look the other way." I slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a donation form. $10,000 to the City Preservation Fund, signed under my new company name. Consider it a legacy contribution. Her eyes widened. "You're serious?" "I always am." By the end of coffee, she'd agreed. I wasn't going as a guest. I was going as a sponsor. That night, I walked through the Harrison Hotel for the first time in months. It had reopened, polished, and proud, but to me, it still reeked of stolen work. My designs were everywhere. The reclaimed wood arches, the Tiffany-style skylight, the restored brickwork I'd fought the city to preserve. Every inch screamed my name, but the plaque by the entrance didn't. Ellison Heritage Group, it read. Restoration Director, Mara Ellison. I ran my hand over the brass letters. They were cold, but soon they'd burn. The staff didn't recognize me, which was good. I wore a dark jacket and carried a clipboard. I could have been anyone. As I walked the halls, I memorized exits, camera placements, electrical panels. Not because I was planning chaos, because I was planning control. The main stage was set beneath the grand chandelier I'd personally restored. My last contribution before she cut me out. There would be lights, cameras, and a live broadcast for the local news. Perfect. Later that night, I called Miles. He was already in Savannah, prepping the article. "Everything ready on your end?" I asked. "I've got the documents, the statements, and Jason's signed affidavit. Once you give the signal, we'll drop the story live. You'll have it when the spotlight hits her." He paused. "You sound calm." "I'm done shaking," I said. "Now I'm aiming." Over the next few days, Savannah hummed with gossip. Socialites speculated about Mara's dress, her speech, her future plans. No one mentioned the name Leora Penn, not yet. But whispers have a way of finding their roots. At a florist's shop, I overheard 2 women talking about the Ellison Miracle Project. I almost laughed out loud. Miracle? Yes. A miracle of forged ink and betrayal. On the morning of the gala, I stood in front of the mirror, buttoning my silver dress suit. It wasn't glamorous. It was armor. I slipped the flash drive, the one with every permit and signature, into my clutch. Alongside it, a small note I'd written to myself months ago. Dignity isn't silence, it's survival with purpose. My hand trembled as I read it, not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. This wasn't about vengeance anymore, it was about truth, and making sure it had the same stage she once stole from me. When I arrived, the valet didn't recognize me. Good. The ballroom glowed in gold and white, full of Savannah's finest, sipping champagne and praising each other's philanthropy. And at the center, under the chandelier I'd restored, stood Mara Ellison, radiant, confident, every inch of her rehearsed perfection. Her laugh still sounded like sugar melting on glass. She didn't see me, not yet, but she would. Because as the orchestra began to play and the spotlight turned toward her, I slipped backstage, handed the technician a small flash drive, and smiled. "This should be the slideshow for Ms. Ellison's presentation," I said calmly, from her assistant. He nodded, took it without a second thought, and just like that, the first domino was placed. I walked back into the crowd, picked up a glass of champagne, and looked at the stage. In a few minutes, the lights would dim, the screens would come alive, and Savannah would see what heritage really meant. The ballroom shimmered like a dream someone else was having. Crystal chandeliers, golden tablecloths, laughter that sounded expensive, the kind of beauty that hides rot underneath. And in the middle of it all stood Mara Ellison, smiling like she owned every breath in the room. Maybe, for now, she did, but not for long. I stayed by the back, near the wine bar, close enough to see, far enough not to be seen. The orchestra played something grand, strings, brass, applause. The lights dimmed. A hush rolled through the room like a tide. Mara walked onto the stage, draped in a gold gown that caught every bit of light. Even her shadow seemed rehearsed. "Good evening, Savannah," she began, voice smooth as honey. "Tonight we celebrate the spirit of restoration, the beauty of preserving what once was, and transforming it into something timeless." Her words floated like perfume, fake, sweet, suffocating. Behind her, the screen lit up with the opening slide. The Harrison Restoration, a legacy reborn. My hands tightened around my glass. That title used to be mine. The slideshow began. Glossy photos, glowing captions. Mara narrated, her voice calm and confident. Every image was my work, my walls, my windows, my heart. But her name glittered in the corner of every frame. She looked radiant, basking in the applause, and I let her, because she didn't know what was coming next. The cue arrived, slide 17. That's when the real presentation began. The screen flickered once, a soft glitch no one noticed, then again. Mara paused, smiled nervously. "Seems we're having a..." And then the image changed. It wasn't the ballroom anymore. It was a scanned document, a permit form with the city seal. Date, February 6, 2018. Applicant, Leora Penn. Signature, forged. Gasps spread across the room like lightning. The next slide appeared. Another document, another fake signature. Then a close-up of the mismatched ink. And finally, an affidavit with Jason Rowe's statement. All permits for the Harrison Hotel were submitted fraudulently by Ms. Ellison. The room erupted in whispers. Phones came out, cameras flashed. And Mara, for the first time, looked terrified. "What is this?" she hissed into the mic. "This isn't my file. Someone's tampered with the presentation." The technician froze. The audience didn't believe her. The city mayor, seated in the front row, frowned deeply. "Turn it off," she screamed. But it was too late. The final slide appeared, a photo of the real restoration team, dated before Mara's takeover. There I was, standing at the center, smiling, hands covered in plaster dust and sunlight. The caption read, "The true architect of the Harrison revival, Leora Penn." For a moment, the entire ballroom went still. Even the chandeliers seemed to hold their breath. Then the whispers began again. Small, sharp, unstoppable. I saw the mayor lean toward an aide, the city inspector stand up, reporters rushing toward the stage. Mara looked around, her face pale beneath the golden lights. She saw me. Our eyes met across the room, hers full of disbelief, mine of quiet fire. I raised my glass slightly, not as a toast, as a verdict. She stormed off stage, pushing past journalists and staff. I slipped away toward the hallway before the chaos caught up. In the corridor, I could hear shouts, the orchestra stopping mid-note, voices echoing through the marble. "Forgery! Investigation! Who is Leora Penn?" That last question made me smile. They'd remember soon enough. Outside, the night air was humid, thick with magnolia and scandal. I walked past the valet stand where people whispered into their phones. Flashes from cameras lit the hotel facade. I didn't stop walking, not even when someone called after me. "Miss, excuse me, are you with the press?" I just said quietly, "No, I'm with the truth," and kept walking into the night. Half an hour later, my phone buzzed. A message from Miles. "We're live. Front page by morning. Title, The Real Restorer of the Harrison Hotel." I typed back one word, "Good." Then I turned off my phone. The city had finally seen what it tried so hard to bury, and Mara Ellison's empire was about to crumble, not from fire, but from light. But as I reached my car, I saw someone waiting by the driver's side. A man in a dark suit. Expression unreadable. He wasn't from the press. He looked official. "Miss Penn?" he asked. "Who's asking?" "Savannah District Attorney's Office. We like a word." I froze, because revenge had a way of spreading fire, even to the hands that lit the match. The man in the black suit didn't blink. Rain began to fall, slow, deliberate, as if the sky itself wanted to eavesdrop. "Am I under arrest?" I asked. "No, ma'am, not yet, but we'd appreciate your cooperation." His voice was calm, practiced, the kind that didn't need to shout to control a room or a person. He handed me a card. "Savannah District Attorney's Office, Detective Rayner. We just need a statement about tonight's incident." I smiled faintly. "Incident? Is that what we're calling the truth now?" He didn't answer. He just gestured toward a black sedan. And for reasons I still don't understand, I got in. The drive was silent except for the rain against the glass. Savannah at night looked softer from behind tinted windows, like the city was ashamed of itself. When we reached the office, Rayner led me into a small conference room that smelled like old paper and burned coffee. He sat. I stood. "You're not in trouble, Ms. Penn," he said finally. "But we need to clarify a few things." "Such as?" "How those documents ended up in a public presentation at a city-funded event." I laughed. It came out hollow. "So now we care about the how, not the why." "Both matter," he said evenly. "You had access to sensitive files, and tonight you made quite a statement." I leaned forward. "Everything in that presentation was real." He met my gaze. "Then you won't mind sharing your sources." I hesitated. Jason Rowe's name flashed in my mind. He'd risked enough already. "Anonymous," I said, "but legitimate." Rayner didn't press. He scribbled something down. Then he looked at me, not unkindly, but with the kind of exhaustion you only see in people who've seen too much truth. "Miss Penn, between you and me, this city's been protecting the wrong people for a long time. Maybe tonight was overdue." That surprised me. For a second, I saw something human behind the badge. "Then why do I feel like I'm the one being interrogated?" He smiled. "Because the truth always comes with paperwork." He finally let me go after an hour. When I stepped back into the night, the rain had stopped. But the city hadn't calmed. News vans lined Bay Street. Reporters crowded the hotel entrance like vultures around a feast. I could see camera flashes through the glass lobby. The aftermath of the spectacle I'd created. For the first time, I wondered if I'd gone too far. The next morning, Savannah woke up angry. Headlines screamed across every newspaper. "Ellison Scandal Rocks Heritage Board. Forgery, fraud, and fireworks at the gala. The fall of Savannah's golden girl." Every channel replayed the moment the slides appeared. They slowed it down, analyzed every flicker, every gasp. And there I was, the woman in the background, barely visible, but suddenly everywhere. Miles called me before noon. "It's chaos, Leora. Mara's gone into hiding. The board suspended all her contracts. The mayor's calling for an ethics review." "Good," I said. "Good doesn't even cover it. You nuked her career." But his tone shifted. "There's a problem." "What kind?" "Someone leaked your name to the press." My blood ran cold. "What?" "They're spinning it, saying you orchestrated the sabotage, that you used falsified data to get revenge." I laughed, bitter. "She lies for years, and they call her visionary. I tell the truth once, and they call me vindictive." That's how media works, Leora. The first narrative wins. By the afternoon, my phone was full of missed calls, emails, and threats. Half the city saw me as a hero. The other half saw me as a scandal. I stayed inside, closed the blinds, watched the storm play out through screens instead of windows. Somewhere between the outrage and the interviews, I caught a live feed of Mara's lawyer outside the courthouse. "Ms. Ellison has been the victim of defamation," he said. "We intend to pursue full legal action against those responsible." Those responsible, meaning me. That night, I found myself at the pier. The same one where I used to sketch the Harrison skyline years ago, when the world was simpler. Or maybe I just was. The ocean was quiet, its reflection broken by streetlight ripples. I thought about Mara, how she must have felt watching her empire crumble, how I'd felt when she destroyed mine. And for the first time, I didn't feel triumph. I felt empty. Revenge isn't a flame, it's a mirror, and sometimes you see the same darkness staring back. My phone buzzed again. Miles. I ignored it. Instead, I whispered to the night, "You took my name, Mara. I took your reputation. Maybe now we're even." But the waves didn't answer. They just kept pulling at the shore, erasing footprints, one by one. As I turned to leave, a single notification lit up my screen. An email from an unknown sender. Subject, "You think it's over." Attachment, a photo. It was a picture of me at the gala, backstage, handing the flash drive to the technician. My heart stopped. Someone had been watching, and now the story wasn't just about her lies. It was about mine. I stared at the photo on my phone until the screen dimmed. It was me, clear as daylight, standing backstage at the gala, handing the flash drive to the technician. The timestamp read 8:47 p.m. I remembered that exact moment. The strings playing, Mara smiling under the lights, my heart pounding like it was trying to warn me. Someone had been there, watching, recording. I looked around my dark apartment, every sound suddenly louder. The hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock, the faint drip from the sink. I checked the window, nothing but rain and neon reflection. Then I opened the email again. No sender address, no signature, just one line under the image. Truth cuts both ways. I forwarded it to Miles. Me. Someone's threatening me. Miles. Who? Me. No idea. They have a photo of me at the gala, backstage. Miles. Send it, now. A few minutes later, he called. Leora, this isn't good. That picture wasn't taken by any media outlet. It's from the hotel's security feed. My throat tightened. So someone inside? Either that or someone who got access afterward. Do you still have contacts there? Not anymore, I said softly. Mara does. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept the lights on and my phone in hand, scrolling through old contacts, old emails, old ghosts. The next morning, another message arrived. Same unknown address. This time, just 4 words. You ruined everything, Elle. The L wasn't mine. It was how Mara used to sign her texts to me. L and M forever. My stomach turned. Could it be her? But how? She'd gone silent since the gala. Reporters said she'd fled the city. But maybe she didn't go far. I decided to find out. I drove back to the Harrison Hotel under a gray sky that looked like it had forgotten how to shine. Police tape still hung at the entrance, pending investigation. The once busy lobby was quiet now, lights dimmed, air heavy with dust and shame. As I stepped inside, I could almost hear the echo of applause. Then the silence that followed it. The receptionist's desk was empty, but the security booth light was on. A young guard looked up as I approached. We're closed, ma'am. I know, I said. I'm just here to retrieve some personal files. He frowned. Everything's been sealed. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. Look, I'm Leora Penn, the original restoration architect. His expression shifted. Recognition, surprise, pity. Oh, you? Yes, me. He hesitated, then nodded toward the back. 10 minutes, I didn't see you. The security room smelled like stale coffee and metal. Rows of monitors flickered with gray static. I searched through the drives, and there it was. The folder labeled Gala 2018. Hundreds of clips, guest speeches, the orchestra, and one labeled Backstage 8:45 p.m. I hit play. There I was, walking toward the technician, handing him the flash drive. But something else caught my eye, a shadow behind me, by the curtain, watching, recording on a phone. I paused, zoomed in, my blood ran cold. The person was not Mara. It was a man, tall, wearing a staff badge, and he was smiling. Looking for something? The voice came from the doorway. I turned sharply. It was Detective Rayner, same calm, unreadable expression. You shouldn't be here, he said. Neither should that photo exist, I replied. He sighed. We traced the email. Came from an encrypted proxy in Atlanta. So it's not from Mara? Unlikely, but whoever sent it has access to private footage, which means someone wants this story to keep burning. He looked at the paused image on the screen. That man, do you recognize him? I shook my head. He worked the lighting crew, hired through a contractor. Name on the list, Jonas Pike. He disappeared the night after the gala. The room felt smaller. You think he's the one sending the emails? Maybe, or maybe someone else paid him too. He turned toward me. You wanted the truth, Ms. Penn, but truth's a dangerous thing in this city, especially when it starts cutting both ways. He handed me his card again. If anything else happens, call me before you act. You think I'm impulsive? No, he said. I think you're tired of losing. Then he left. I sat alone in the humming dark, the screen still frozen on that man's smirk. Somewhere between fear and fury, I realized this wasn't over. Because for every lie I'd exposed, there was still one shadow left unseen. And maybe, just maybe, it was coming for me next. Savannah mornings always look too gentle for what they hide. The fog rolls in from the river, soft and innocent, as if it doesn't know it's covering the bones of betrayal. I hadn't slept. The video from last night kept looping in my mind. The shadowed man, the smirk, the camera. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him behind me. The next day, Miles called again. His tone was off, sharp, nervous. Leora, we've got a problem. Another one. Jonas Pike, the lighting tech from the gala. He's dead. The words hit like a blow. What do you mean dead? Found this morning. Car submerged off the bridge near Tybee Island. No ID on him, but his name tag was still clipped to the seatbelt. The line went silent. Even the city outside seemed to stop breathing. Accident? I asked finally. That's what they're saying, but you and I both know better. I hung up and stared at the blueprint rolled on my table. The Harrison Hotel layout. The last project before everything burned. Every line, every measurement felt haunted now. There was something unfinished about it, something I hadn't seen before. I unrolled it completely, flattened the edges, and noticed faint pencil marks. A note scrawled along the corner of the ballroom outline. Sublevel foundation, sealed 1982, no access. I frowned. I had never seen that note during restoration. No record of a sublevel existed in the plans Mara stole. So why was it here, on mine? I grabbed my coat. If Jonas had been at the gala, if he had footage, and if he died right after, it meant something was buried deeper than forgery. And the Harrison wasn't done whispering yet. When I got to the hotel, the guard who'd let me in before wasn't there. A new one stood outside, older, harder. He looked at me with suspicion. Hotel's closed, ma'am. I'm aware, I just need 5 minutes. You can't go in. I handed him Rayner's card. Detective authorized me. Investigation follow-up. He hesitated, then stepped aside. 5 minutes, no longer. The interior was darker now. Most lights off, floor slick with condensation. The ballroom, my ballroom, looked like a stage after the play had ended, still dressed in the ghosts of applause. I walked to the far end, near the emergency exit, where the note on the blueprint said the sealed foundation should be. There, behind a layer of plaster, a faint outline of an old door frame. Someone had covered it decades ago. I pressed my hand against the wall. It sounded hollow. I found a maintenance bar nearby and began to pry. Dust fell in sheets, coating my shoes, and behind it, metal. An old service hatch, rusty but real. I pulled it open, the hinges groaning like a warning. Inside was a staircase leading downward. Cold air rising like a sigh from the dark. The first step creaked under my weight. The sound echoed too long, like it didn't want to end. The deeper I went, the colder it got. Concrete walls, narrow corridor, faint smell of oil and time. My phone flashlight cut through the dark, and then caught something that made me stop breathing. Stacks of old restoration files. Boxes labeled City Archives. Confidential. Blueprints, permits, inspection logs. Some with Mara's name, some with mine. Some with neither. One box had a label smeared in ink. I brushed the dust away. It read, Project Rowe. Jason Rowe, the retired permit officer, the man who'd given me the proof. His name was on city property. I opened the box. Inside, hundreds of photocopies of approval letters, altered seals, duplicate signatures. It wasn't just my project. It was dozens. Every major restoration in Savannah for the past decade. All tainted. All linked to the same forgery trail. And every forged document had one common notation in the margins. Handled by M.E.E. M.E. Myra Ellison. But near the bottom, I found something stranger. A contract dated before Mara ever moved to Savannah. Signed by someone else entirely. M.E. Marion Ellison. My pulse stopped. Mara's mother. Suddenly, the story cracked open like thunder. The fraud didn't start with Mara. It was a family operation, passed down, perfected, woven into the foundation of every heritage project the city had ever approved. And Jonas Pike, the technician, he must have stumbled on the same secret. He didn't die in an accident. He was silenced. Footsteps echoed above me. I froze. Someone was in the building. I turned off my flashlight, pressed against the wall. The steps grew closer, slow, deliberate, coming down the stairs. And then I heard a voice I hadn't expected to hear again. You always did love digging where you shouldn't, Leora. My blood went cold. That voice, low, calm, southern velvet dipped in poison. Mara. You should have stayed gone, she said. The city loved you once. Now they're laughing at you again. You did my job for me. I took a step back, my hand tightening around the flashlight like a weapon. You killed him, I said. Jonas, he had proof. He had nothing, just curiosity. And you know what curiosity does down here? She smiled. It gets buried. Behind her, I saw the faint glint of something metallic. A revolver. You won't shoot me, I said. You don't get to control the ending anymore? She laughed softly. Sweetheart, I wrote the ending. She raised the gun, and before she could pull the trigger, a shout echoed from above. Savannah PD, drop it. Raynor's voice, then chaos. Flashlights, footsteps, the clatter of steel. Mara turned, fired once. The bullet ricocheted against the concrete, and in the confusion, she disappeared into the dark. By the time the officers reached me, she was gone. But I was still standing, covered in dust and truth. Raynor stared at the open boxes. What the hell is all this? The city's dirty laundry, I said, and it's about to come clean. By dawn, Savannah felt heavier, as if the whole city had woken up carrying the same secret. The air still smelled like concrete dust and gunpowder. Raynor had sealed the Harrison basement by sunrise, but the boxes, the proof, the names, they were real. And once seen, they couldn't be unseen. I sat in the back of the patrol car, blanket over my shoulders, hands trembling more from adrenaline than cold. You'll need to make a statement, Raynor said quietly. Not just about tonight, about all of it. I stared at the hotel facade, once a monument to pride, now a mausoleum of deceit. What happens now, I asked. We take it to the DA, but if this goes public, Leora, there'll be backlash. You're not just exposing Mara, you're pulling down a whole system. I looked at him. Good. He gave a small smile, the kind people give before the storm. Then I hope you're ready for war. 2 days later it began. Headlines flooded every outlet. City corruption scandal, heritage permits forged for decades. Documents found in Harrison sublevel lead to criminal inquiry. Leora Penn, from accused to whistleblower. My face was on every screen again. This time not as the villain, but as the witness. The woman who dug too deep. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt watched. The messages started soon after. Anonymous numbers. Half threats, half warnings. You don't know who you're dealing with. You'll regret this, Penn. The city doesn't want saving. I changed my number. Didn't help. Whoever was behind this wasn't finished. Raynor checked in daily. His voice had that tired patience of someone walking through fire too long. They'll try to make you doubt yourself. Stay grounded. Stay loud. But every night I heard footsteps outside my apartment. Every night I woke to shadows that looked too intentional to be dreams. On the third night, I found something under my door. An envelope, unmarked. Inside was a photo, a black and white image of a woman standing in front of the Harrison Hotel in the 1970s, smiling. The note on the back read, Marion started it, but she wasn't the first. My blood froze. Someone was feeding me information, not to help, but to keep me chasing. The next morning, Raynor met me at a diner by the waterfront. He looked like he hadn't slept either. The investigation's spreading, he said. City officials, construction firms, even banks. This thing goes back 40 years. And Mara? Gone. Her account's frozen, her car found abandoned near the old pier. We think she's still in the city. He slid me a file. These are names connected to the original permit fraud. One might lead to her, or worse. The first name on the list made my chest tighten. Benjamin Ellison. Her father, I asked? Former city architect. Died in 1989, officially. Officially? Body was never recovered, just an obituary and a payout. I leaned back. The pattern stretched across generations. Ellisons building their empire on falsified history, rewriting Savannah one brick at a time. And I had just ripped the last page out of their story. That evening, I returned home to find my door ajar. My heart dropped. I stepped inside slowly, fingers brushing along the wall for the switch. The living room light flickered on. Nothing looked stolen, nothing looked touched, except for one thing. The blueprint, the original design of the Harrison Hotel, now unrolled on my table. Across it, drawn in thick red marker, "You don't belong in this story." The window was open, curtains moving in the night breeze. I stepped closer, half expecting a shadow to emerge, half wishing it would, because at least then, I'd have a face for my fear. But there was nothing, just the sound of the city breathing slow and shallow. I turned off the light, sat on the floor, and let my pulse match the rhythm of the storm outside. Maybe this wasn't revenge anymore, maybe it was penance, because the deeper I dug, the more I realized this wasn't just about me and Mara. It was about Savannah itself, a city built on stories, rotting from the ones it refused to tell. At midnight, I received another email, no text, just a single video file. When I opened it, my screen filled with static. Then a voice, distorted but unmistakable. "You wanted the truth, Leora. Let's see how far you'll go for it." Then a flash of an address, familiar. Pier 9, the same place where Mara's car had been found. I stared at the screen, heart hammering. Maybe it was a trap, maybe it was closure, maybe both. I grabbed my coat, and as I stepped into the rain, I whispered to the empty room, "This time, I'm not running from the fire. I'm walking straight into it." The road to Pier 9 was nearly deserted. Rain blurred the streetlights into streaks of gold, turning the city into a painting that refused to dry. Every part of me screamed, "Don't go." But curiosity, or justice, was louder. And maybe I just needed to see how deep this lie really went. The pier stretched into the fog like a forgotten thought. The sea was restless, black and alive. Every step echoed on the wet planks. I gripped the flashlight in one hand, my phone in the other. No signal, of course. Somewhere ahead, a soft hum. Electric, mechanical, a generator maybe, or a trap. Halfway down, I saw it. An old boat tethered to the dock. Its name painted faintly on the side. The Marion. My breath caught. Her mother's name. The deck light flickered on by itself, casting the shape of a lone figure standing by the cabin door. "Mara," I whispered. She turned slowly. Rain streaked her face, mascara bleeding into the lines of exhaustion. She looked older, like she'd aged a decade in 2 weeks. "You came," she said. "You asked," I replied. Her laugh was quiet, tired, cracked. "I didn't think you'd be stupid enough. Then you don't know me anymore." I stepped closer. "You've been hiding here?" "Hiding? No, waiting." "For what?" "For the truth to sink, like everything else in this town." She gestured toward a table inside the cabin. Papers were spread out. Old ledgers, faded photos, the kind that smell like time itself. "What is this?" "The rest of the story," she said. "Before me, before my mother." I stared at the pages. City documents from the 1960s, blueprints, signatures, seals. And one photograph of a young man standing before the half-built Harrison Hotel. A name scrawled on the back, Benjamin Ellison. Mara's father, but beside him another figure, a woman I recognized instantly. My mother. For a moment, everything inside me stopped. "That's impossible," I whispered. "No," Mara said softly. "It's inevitable." She stepped closer, voice trembling but deliberate. "They built this city together, Leora. Your mother handled design and preservation, my father, the permits and money. And when it all went wrong, she disappeared, and he took the fall." "You're lying." "Am I? Why do you think you were so drawn to the Harrison? Why you fought so hard to protect it?" Her eyes glimmered like broken glass. "Because it's in your blood, too." I shook my head, stepping back. But the dock beneath me groaned. Old wood soaked with secrets. "You're trying to rewrite the past." "I'm trying to finish it," she snapped. "Everything they built was a lie. I just carried it forward, and so did you, whether you meant to or not." Her voice cracked. "You think I wanted to ruin you? I wanted to keep you close, because you were the only one who understood what this city does to people like us." I could feel the storm closing in, wind screaming through the pier, waves clawing at the post below. "Then why burn me down, Mara?" I shouted. "Because," she said, "you were supposed to help me rebuild it, not destroy it." The air snapped with thunder. She stepped forward, pulling something from her coat. A drive, small and silver. What's that? Everything. The master records. The real proof. Every forged document. Every payout. Every death covered up. She held it out. Take it and this. But when you do, you'll burn more than me. You'll destroy your mother's legacy too. My hand hovered above it. The metal was cold, heavy with history. Why give it to me? Because I can't carry it anymore, she whispered. And because you're the only one strong enough to live with it. Lightning split the sky. The sea surged, slamming against the boat. A beam snapped loose, sending both of us stumbling. The drive slipped from my fingers, bounced once, twice, and plunged into the dark water below. Mara screamed. I grabbed her arm as she reached over the edge. It's gone, I shouted. Then so are we, she gasped. Her grip tightened, her eyes wild with something between rage and release. Maybe this is how it ends, Leora, the truth sinking with us. She leaned forward, too far, and the pier gave way beneath her. I reached out, but my fingers closed on empty air. Mara vanished into the storm. The rain swallowed her scream. Only her name echoed, then silence. I fell to my knees, soaked, shaking. The flashlight flickered once, then died. The sea had taken everything, the lies, the proof, and her. By the time Raynor's team arrived, I could barely speak. They searched for hours, nothing. No body, no drive, just the ghost of a woman who'd tried to bury the truth, and became part of it. Raynor crouched beside me as dawn broke. You did what you could, he said. She's gone. I looked at the horizon, pale and quiet, like the city was pretending nothing happened. No, I said softly, not gone, just deeper. He frowned. What do you mean? The truth doesn't drown, Raynor. It waits. And somewhere beneath the gray waves of Savannah's coast, I swore I saw a flicker of silver, a glint that refused to fade. The past wasn't finished. It was only waiting to be found again. 3 days after the storm, Savannah went quiet. The waves stopped raging, the news stopped shouting, and the city, that beautiful, broken city, pretended like nothing had ever happened. But I couldn't. I stayed in a rented room above an old bookshop near the river. Every morning, I'd watch the sunrise creep over the rooftops, turning the city gold again, as if it deserved redemption. The papers had stopped mentioning Mara. They called her missing, presumed dead. The investigation into the heritage fraud continued, but the drive, the proof, was gone. All that remained was a ghost story, and me. Raynor came by one afternoon. He looked older, maybe from the sleepless nights, maybe from carrying too much truth in one lifetime. You should leave town for a while, he said. You've done enough. I poured him coffee from a cracked mug. You mean I've stirred enough trouble? He gave a tired smile. Depends who you ask. He slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were black and white photos, grainy shots from the salvage team. The Marion had washed up 2 miles down the coast, empty. But on the last page, a photo of something small, wedged in the ship's hull. A silver drive. They found it this morning, Raynor said. Partially damaged but recoverable. If what's inside matches your story, Savannah's about to go through hell. I stared at it, my pulse steady and slow. Do you want to be part of that? He asked. I didn't answer, because the truth was, I didn't know anymore. Revenge had started as fire, but now it felt like ash, cold, clean, empty. That night, I walked to the riverfront. The air smelled of rain and smoke, the way it always does when something's been washed away but not forgotten. The water was calm again, deceptively so. I thought about Mara, about our mothers, about the line between guilt and inheritance. Maybe we were both built from the same foundation, cracked, but holding anyway. The next morning, I went to City Hall. Raynor met me at the steps. Dozens of reporters waited behind barriers, flashes going off like lightning. You don't have to do this, he murmured. They'll twist whatever you say. They already have, I replied. I walked up to the podium, microphones bristling like thorns. 3 weeks ago, I began. I stood in this city as the woman they called a liar. But lies built Savannah. Lies gave it its skyline, its stories, its beauty. I don't stand here to destroy it. I stand here because I believe truth can rebuild it better. The crowd fell silent. Mara Ellison wasn't the only one at fault. She inherited a legacy of deceit, and so did I, but I refused to pass it on. I looked up at the courthouse dome. Once gleaming, now dull. History is only worth keeping if it learns to tell the truth. After the press conference, I turned in the drive. It would take weeks to verify, months to prosecute. But the city had finally started talking. And for once, Savannah wasn't whispering behind closed doors. It was shouting. Later, I drove back to the pier, the one where it had all ended. The sea was calm now. The boards had been repaired, but I could still see the faint scorch marks where lightning struck that night. I sat at the edge, feet dangling above the water. From my pocket, I pulled a small brass pendant, the only thing recovered from Mara's belongings, a locket. Inside, 2 photos, one of her mother. I closed it gently and whispered, "Maybe you were right, Mara. The truth cuts both ways, but at least it still shines." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Savannah glowed again, gold and ghostly, just like before. But this time, the light felt honest. It's been 2 years since the storm. Savannah rebuilt herself the way she always does. Slowly, beautifully, without ever truly changing. The papers called it the restoration scandal. Trials came and went. Names were cleared, others ruined. Buildings got new plaques, and old ghosts got new stories. And through it all, I learned something. Truth doesn't rebuild cities. People do. And people are messy. I live quietly now, in a small apartment above a pottery studio in Charleston. No blueprints, no deadlines, just clay, silence, and time. Sometimes I drive back to Savannah, not to visit anyone, just to see what's still standing. The Harrison Hotel has reopened under a new name, the Palmetto House. They kept the ballroom, they painted over the cracks, but under the fresh white, I can still see the faint outline of the old wall, the one that once hid the door to the truth. Rainer retired last winter. He sent me a postcard from Maine, a photograph of a lighthouse, and one line written in neat block letters. Some lights never go out, they just change color. I keep it pinned to my mirror. Next to it hangs Mara's locket, tarnished, dented, but unbroken. Sometimes I still open it, look at her face, wonder what she'd think of what became of her story. Maybe she'd laugh, maybe she'd call me naive, or maybe, just maybe, she'd finally understand why I didn't burn the city down. One evening, as the sun fell behind the marshes, I took a walk by the water. The tide was low, revealing bits of driftwood and rusted metal. Something silver caught my eye. Half buried in the sand, I knelt down. A small USB drive, weathered, corroded, but unmistakably real. My heart stopped. Could it be? I picked it up. It was cold, heavier than I remembered. For a long moment, I just stood there, watching the sunlight glint off its scarred surface. Then I smiled, because I finally understood. Some truths don't need to be unearthed again. They've already done their work. That night, I threw it into the sea. It sank slowly, a thin trail of bubbles marking its descent, until the water swallowed it whole. And as the ripples faded, so did the last piece of anger I had left. I still make art, not with paint or paper, but with clay. Hands covered in dust, heart a little lighter each day. Sometimes I carve words into the base of my pieces. A message, a reminder. Truth doesn't burn, it transforms. When tourists buy them, they never know where that phrase comes from. They just call it poetic, and maybe it is. But for me, it's a memory of a city that lied to itself until someone finally made it speak, of 2 women who built and broke the same dream, of fire, water, and silence, and the light that somehow survived them all. And when the kiln glows at night, casting gold across the studio walls, it almost looks like Savannah again, alive, flawed, and beautiful. Only this time, it's honest. 5 years later, Savannah feels different. Or maybe it's just me. The storms don't scare me anymore. Neither does silence. I've learned that both come to clean what needs to be cleansed. The city rebuilt itself again, but not in marble or glass, in humility. The new historical commission includes younger voices now, people who question the stories carved into the plaques. They invited me once to speak about preservation and truth. I declined, because some lessons shouldn't be lectured, they should be lived. Last week I received a letter, no return address. The handwriting was familiar, bold, looping, precise. It simply read, "The sea doesn't keep secrets forever." Inside was a photograph, a pier, old, half-rotten, but not Pier 9. This one was somewhere tropical, blue water, golden light. And in the corner of the photo, a shadow. A woman with hair the color of ash and gold, walking toward the horizon. No name, no timestamp. But I knew. Mara was alive. I didn't feel anger, not even shock, just a strange, quiet peace. Maybe she deserved that ending. the kind that no one could write for her. I placed the photo in the kiln beside a half-finished vase, watched as the paper curled into flame, turning memory into light. These days, I spend my mornings by the river. I bring coffee and sketch a little. Not buildings, but ripples. Because rivers are storytellers too. They remember every storm, every secret dropped into their depths. But they never hold on to them forever. They just keep flowing, softly, patiently, towards something bigger. Sometimes, children from the pottery studio ask about the phrase I carve on every piece. Truth doesn't burn, it transforms. They say, "It sounds sad." I smile. Maybe, but it's also a promise. Because when the world breaks you, you have two choices. Turn to ash or turn to art. At sunset, the river glows like liquid gold. It moves slow, deliberate, like it's remembering everything and forgiving it anyway. I close my eyes and I swear I hear a voice in the wind, familiar, teasing, alive. "You never did learn to let things sink, did you, Leora?" I smile, eyes still closed. "Neither did you, Mara." The wind shifts, gentle, warm, carrying laughter that isn't really there. And for the first time in years, Savannah feels quiet, but not silent. Alive, but not lying. Just free. As the last light fades, I whisper to the river, "We finished the story," and the water whispers back, rippling softly like applause. 10 years. That's how long it's been since the night the pier collapsed. Since the storm swallowed Mara Ellison and the last of our city's lies. Savannah doesn't talk about that night anymore, not in the papers, not in history books. But sometimes, when the fog comes in thick from the river, you can still feel the echo of it, a hush, like the city itself remembering. I'm 54 now. The lines on my hands look like blueprints, some cracked, some fading, but all still leading somewhere. My pottery studio has grown. Students come from all over the South to learn the Savannah method, a technique I never named, but they did. They think it's about symmetry and balance. It isn't. It's about forgiveness. Because every piece starts from something broken, a crack, a collapse, a flaw that becomes the center of beauty. One morning, a journalist visited. She was writing a retrospective on the Harrison scandal, 10 years later. Her name was June, young, curious, too sharp for her own safety. She placed a recorder on the table and asked, "Do you ever regret what happened?" I smiled. Regret is for people who think truth has an off switch. She frowned. "You lost so much." "So did Savannah," I said. "But we also found something, honesty, even if it hurt." June looked around the studio. Her eyes fell on a sculpture, a tall ceramic column, split down the middle, the two halves fused together with golden resin. "What's this one called?" she asked. "The Gilded Lie." "You named your work after the scandal." "No," I said softly, "after the lesson." She wrote that down, then she asked the question I knew was coming. "Do you think Mara Ellison is really dead?" I paused. The kiln hummed behind me, warm and alive. "I think people like Mara don't die," I said. "They just change form." June tilted her head. "Meaning?" "Meaning that lies, like art, don't disappear when you break them. They just reveal what's underneath." After she left, I stood by the window for a long time. Rain was falling again, soft, like it was being careful not to disturb anything. And then I noticed something on my doorstep. A small package, wrapped in brown paper, no return address. Inside was a fragment of ceramic, glazed white and gold. A piece that didn't belong to anything I'd ever made. Taped to it was a note. Even the sea returns what it can't keep. No signature, but I didn't need one. I smiled. That night, I placed the fragment in my kiln beside a half-finished vase. When it emerged, fused and shining, I saw it clearly. A new pattern born from what had once been lost. For the first time in years, I felt no guilt, no fear, only gratitude. Every story leaves something behind. An echo, a mark, a scar that glints when the light hits right. Mara and I didn't rebuild Savannah, but we gave it what it needed most, a mirror. And sometimes, that's all a city needs to start again. Tonight, I light the kiln. The flames rise gold, reflected in every piece that's ever carried the weight of truth. And as the studio fills with warmth, I whisper one last time. The lie was never the enemy. Silence was. Outside, the rain has stopped. The air smells of clay and thunder and peace. And in the faint hum of the night, I could swear I hear two voices, mine and hers, laughing softly in unison. Not as rivals, not as ghosts, but as creators.